Danny Crane, and welcome back to TIS-100. Today we're going to continue on with our walkthrough. In my last video you saw me do the first 5 levels here, and we're going to start off with the sequence generator. Now this one, I have to read in the values from A and B, figure out which one is lower, write that one first down to the out, then write the second one down there, and then finish it off with a 0. And then continue the whole cycle again. So what we're going to do first is start with this one here, and always start with the start symbol when we're going to be doing something a little bit more complicated. We're going to move the value to the accumulator, and then we're going to save it. Oops, don't need the E there. So that'll make it go into the accumulator and the backup, and then what we're going to do is we're going to have to get the value from the A input. So we're going to start with moving up to the accumulator, and then we're going to send that to the right so the other side can work with it. Now we got to figure out which one is higher. So the way to do that is subtract them. So we'll go ahead and sub the left input, and we're either going to get a positive number or a negative number, and that'll tell us which one needs to go out first. So what we're going to do is we're going to have it jump when it's less than 0 to A. And I don't have that programmed yet. So if it's less than 0, that means that the A input was higher than the B input. And since it's subtracted from it, it gave us a negative number. So if this is lower, we need to send this out first. So we're actually going to need to send the value a second time to the right. And what we're going to want to do is move that value from the left to down. And then we're going to swap, which will move our backup value back to the accumulator. And then we're going to move that down as well. And then we're going to have it jump back to the start. If I could spell jump right. There we go. Alright, so that takes care of us if the A input is higher, or rather lower, than the B input. But we still need to send it the other way if the case is not right. So we're going to go ahead and put down our A. We're going to swap first. So once it gets here, it's going to jump down to here, and it's going to swap these values around. So we're going to get that backup value back into the accumulator, and we're going to send that down. And then we're going to take our left input, which is getting sent a second time. Oops. And we're going to send that down. And that's it as far as this box is concerned. That takes us through everything if we had it set up right. Now, down here, we're going to move the up value down. What? There we go. I had the U instead of a V. Alright, so that's going to move the first value down. We're going to move up, down again. That'll take the second value. Now we have to send a 0 out. So all we're going to do is move. Now you can write 0, you can write nil. I just like 0 right here. And we'll send that down. And then all this one has to do is move the up, down. So let's go ahead and do this step by step. So it takes in both values. We got 17 over here, we got 56 over here. It's going to step it down, and it's going to save that to the backup. There we go. And then it's going to subtract the 17, which gives us 39. So it's going to just continue on down through this one. So, oops, I hit the wrong button there. Let's stop that real quick, and we'll go back through the steps. Alright, so it checks it. It's higher. It's going to move the left value down first because that one is lower. And it's going to swap it so we get the backup back into the accumulator. And then it's going to move that on down. And then right here it'll write our 0 and has us taken care of. So I'll just let this play on out. Not too bad, kind of in the average for everything. We'll go ahead and go back to the segment list. Okay, on to the next one. So we're going to go take a look at the sequence counter. So this one, a little bit different, but kind of the same. It still does that 0 terminated sequence at the end, but this time we're actually reading the values. So we're going to get a value from the n, and we have to, anytime we don't get a 0, we have to add up all of the inputs, and we have to output the sum of those to the s, and we have to output how many values we got in to the L side here. So the way we're going to start with this first is we're going to get our n. So we're going to bring that value from the input, so move up over to the ACC. Then what we're going to do is check to see if it's 0, because if it's 0, we're done with this. It doesn't have to do anything. So jump equals 0 to, I'm just going to do y for yes. Seems to work for this one. Now, if it's not 0, we need to send the values out. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to have this block add up how many input numbers we got. So we're going to move a 1 to the right, and then we're going to take the actual value that we got, which is still in our accumulator. So move the accumulator down, and then we're going to jump back to the start. So jump S. Now, if the number we get is a 0, we're going to have to do something with that. So what we're going to do is move 0, or I could write nil, or I could write accumulator, because that's what it's going to be, to the right. Oh, and I wrote an O instead of a 0. I like to do that sometimes. And then we're going to also move 0 down. Alright, so that takes care of this block. That's really all we have to do there. Let's do this one here. This is just going to add up the number of inputs we had. So we're going to start with the start again, and we're going to move the value we get from the left to the accumulator, and we're going to again check if the value is 0, and if it is, we're going to have it jump down. If it's not, we're going to swap the value. So we're going to move our backup to the accumulator instead, and we're going to add 1. So because all we have to do is figure out how many values we had, and then we're going to swap it again to put that back into the backup, and then we're going to jump back to the start. Now if we get a 0, we're going to swap, and we're going to move that value, that value that we've been building up, down, and that's it. And then we can go back up to the start. So that's it for this. So we can go ahead and move up, down, and then move up, down. So that takes care of this side. This will send out the value, so hopefully all of this will match up. Now we have to deal with the adding of all of our inputs. So we're going to start with this one, and again, start with the start, and we're going to move up to the accumulator, and again we're going to check to see if it's 0. And if it is, we're going to have it go down to the Y program. We're going to write a little bit further down. If it's not, what we're going to want to do is move the accumulated value to the left. We're going to use this square over here to basically hold on to the value for us while we're dealing with having to add it. Then what we're going to do is swap. So we're going to move that back up to the accumulator, and then we're going to get that value that we sent over to this block back. So we're going to do add left to it, and then we're going to swap again to save that value into the backup, and then we're going to jump back to the start. Now we have to deal with the number that we sent over here, so we're going to move right to the accumulator, and then move accumulator to the left, or not left, right. So that's just going to take the value and send it right back. Alright, so now we have to deal with if the number is 0. So we're going to start with our Y. We're going to swap the value, so we're going to get that backup value that we've been adding to, put it back up into the accumulator, and then we're just going to move the accumulator down. And that has us done, and then it'll start back up to start and start all over again. So we'll go ahead and do move up, down. Been doing that a lot today. All right, and that should do it. So if we step through this, we're going to move in the value, which is a 0 on the first one. Checks it, it's a 0, and it moves 0 to both of those values. And it's just going to write zeros out because there's nothing saved in the backups or the accumulators, so it clears that through. Now the next one, we got a 79. It checked it, realized it was higher, so it moved a 1 over to here, and so that's starting its little run. And then it's going to send the 79 on down to the lower cube there, checks it, moves it to the left, bounces it back to the right, and then adds it. And there we go, and then it'll jump back to the start. And while it was doing that, this sent down a 20 over to here, so we are adding 1 to our saved value over here. It's going to add the 20 right there, so it takes us from 79 to 99, and it'll continue doing that for the 19 that's coming on down. So, and finally we get our 0 coming down, sends out zeros to both, checks it, sees that it's a 0, swaps our backup value back to the accumulator and sends that down. And while it did that, this one is going to do the same thing, sends it down, and we have a good value. So we'll go ahead and let this run. And it's adding everything up the way it's supposed to. No problems or hiccups on this one. I'm sure there's probably a better way to do this one, but this is just the way I found out, or I figured it out. So let's go back to the list. And that does it for this video. I'm going to start breaking these up a little bit more, not do as many puzzles in the same video just because they're getting a little bit more complicated, take a little bit more time to solve. In the next video, we're going to take a look at the signal edge detector and the interrupt handler. Both of those are a little bit more challenging than the past two ones that we just did, so that should be interesting. Until next time, Danny Crane.